In this video, I'm gonna make you the best Death Knight you can become. This is gonna make you either the best DK on your server, the best DK in your guild, your region, for whatever your role is, whether you're a Frost DK, Blood DK, or an Unholy DK, and whatever you focus on, single target boss damage, or overall damage through the raid, or even just tanking. Today, I'm gonna give you my top 7 tips for becoming a pro DK. And really fast, we did just hit 40,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel. Guys, thank you so much. So guys, I will be doing a massive giveaway. Stay tuned to the end of the video to hear more about that. So tip number 1 is gonna be that Leeway is a mechanic you absolutely want to abuse. If you don't know what Leeway is, it is basically whenever you are strafing or jumping, everything you do with some sort of AoE mechanic actually has a larger range. It is quite significant and very important for Death Knights. One thing you can do is actually spread all of your diseases at a larger range if you actually jump when you press something like Pestilence. This will increase the entire radius of the actual range of all of your AoE spells. So if you're a little ADHD and you're always AD strafing, or you're jumping all the time on bosses, it's actually not a bad thing. That's actually increasing your DPS now. The easiest way for me to show this to you is in the case of Death and Decay itself. So I'm not gonna move my cursor, and if you look at the target dummies to my right, you can see that they're right outside of the circle of Death and Decay. So if I drop Death and Decay without doing any strafing or without jumping, it will not hit this target dummy. But if I actually don't move my cursor at all and jump and do this, you do see that now my Death and Decay is also hitting the target dummy and the actual boss target dummy in the middle. So my D&D had a massive range increase. You can see where the circle is, and it actually hits 2 extra targets, which if I did this on a trash pack, this is a huge increase in the range of your actual abilities. Now, in the focus of Death and Decay, let's keep it kind of rolling and let's move on to tip number 2. Tip number 2 is for Frost DKs specifically. And what this is that the rotations in my own guides and in every other guide you've probably ever seen are always going to tell you to get your diseases up, spread them, and also hit with the Howling Blast on any sort of AoE situation. Well, if the trash packs are gonna die too quickly, it's actually significantly more DPS to hit with a Death and Decay for a massive trash pack, and then hitting with a big Howling Blast and also with a Blood Boil to do more damage. This is just a quick tip, but it is also a huge DPS increase for Frost DKs if you're looking at the raid as a whole. Tip number 3 is that Tundra Stalker, the actual talent for Frost DKs, that gives you 15% extra damage from your abilities and spells from every target that's already infected by Frost Fever. Sometimes if you are the only Frost Death Knight and you have a Killing Machine proc, you don't want to waste it by dropping Icy Touch on your mobs in front of you and then actually not having a crit on this huge Howling Blast. What you can do instead is actually go in and use Chains of Ice. This will apply a Frost Fever plague on the target, and then you can spread it with Pestilence and then go in and use Howling Blast. But that's not actually everything you can do with this. If you actually have a Frost DK tank in your raid and he has Glyph of Howling Blast, it will spread Frost Fever to every one of these targets whenever you're moving into a trash pack. And the Tundra Stalker talent doesn't just require it to be your own Frost Fever on the target. It can be anyone's Frost Fever up on the target. So if you do have a Frost tank in your raid and you want to increase the DPS of all of the Frost DKs in your raid, using Glyph of Howling Blast to get a huge Frost Fever on every mob as you're running into a big trash pack, and then having them have 15% extra damage on every single ability without having to spread their diseases first is going to be huge. Tip number 4 is to utilize Rune Grace Period and to understand what is Rune Grace Period. It's this weird mechanic in the game, and you can see it on my own DK HUD right here in the center that I am tracking it. It is showing this little kind of orangish bars that I do have this Rune Grace Period. What it essentially means is that every rune has a 10-second cooldown timer. Whenever you use a rune until you can use it again is always going to be 10 seconds. But the way the game used to work, we had really old computers, and whenever you tried to press your button right as your runes came off of cooldown, sometimes there was a little bit of an input lag. So if you had something like a 1-second input lag just pressing the button, then you would have lost out on 1 second of using your abilities. And that would add up significantly throughout a fight to something like 20 seconds of abilities lost. Well, what Blizzard did to combat this was implement Rune Grace Period, which is essentially giving you 2.5 seconds after the rune comes off of cooldown to not lose out on that 10-second window. Pretty much whenever you utilize this, you will get a 7.5-second rune. You'll see that all of my runes as I'm using them right now will go into a 7.5-second timer instead of a 10-second timer. It still was 20 seconds total from me being able to use these runes twice. But what you can do with this, especially as a Frost DK, is get something out like an extra Frost Strike, an extra Howling Blast if you have a proc for that, and then still not waste time on then going back and using your Obliterates. And if you can learn how to use this well, which I have a video on the members only part of my channel that goes very deep into how to utilize this, then it will be a huge DPS increase for you. Not just Frost DKs, it's also massively useful for Unholy DKs and also for blood tanks if you are actually thinking about the entirety of a raid as a whole. Tip number 5. You know how pretty much at the beginning of every fight, you kind of get all of the procs you ever wanted. If you just start out a fight, you get your Darkmoon card Greatness to proc, you get your cloak if you've got that, you get both of your trinkets with your meteorite whetstone. All of these things always proc pretty much at the start of a fight. And then they go into an internal cooldown where they can't proc again until that ICD is over. Well, sometimes you actually have a bloodlust that's a little bit late in a fight. And that would mean your procs would already be done or your trinkets are already done by the time you actually get your bloodlust, and you want to pair that all up with your gargoyle. What you can actually do is have a macro that changes what position your trinkets are in. And this will put them initially just right away on a 30-second internal cooldown. So if you just swap the trinket positions, now at the very beginning of whatever fight you're going into, your trinkets will not proc. You can also do the same thing if you've got a separate cloak, equip it, and then switch it. And it won't put your cloak enchant if you are a tailor and kind of going for those cheesy parses. This is really important for speedruns and again, any fight where you're not gonna have bloodlust right away. So the macro for something like this would look exactly like what I have in the background. An equip slot macro for 14 and 13, your 2 trinkets, just swapping the 2 trinkets. This will put them on a cooldown so that again, as you move into the boss fight, whenever you actually are sitting in bloodlust, you'll probably wait a few seconds and then your CDs will finally proc and you'll get a huge snapshot instead of fully scuffing yourself and having to kind of force your way around a snapshot. Tip number 6. This one is for any DK tanks out there, guys. There's a weird bug that's going around in the talent bladed barrier. And so what this does is gives you 5% reduced damage taken for the next 10 seconds if both of your blood runes are on CD. You want to have this buff up as you're moving into a boss fight, but you also don't want to have your blood runes on cooldown when you're on a boss fight, right? You can actually extend this if you use Horn of Winter. Horn of Winter, for some reason, the normal ability, Horn of Winter, will still give you runic power and will refresh Bladed Barrier buff. Tip number 7 and the last tip today, other than bonus tips I'm gonna give at the end, but those are just gonna be rapid fire, is that you can control your gargoyle and your army of the dead. A lot of times you'll summon your army of the dead and they'll pretty much just sit there doing nothing. Or you'll summon your gargoyle and it'll attack a target, but that target dies and then it doesn't do anything past that. Well, if you summon your gargoyle, one, it should probably be only on bosses, so don't do that. But if you accidentally tab out or something, you can control what everything is targeting. And to do this, you use your normal pet commands. So what you'll do is recall your pet and then send your pet, which is pet follow or pet passive, whichever one you prefer, and then /pet attack. If you use these macros, you can fully change the target of what your abilities are attacking. This can be huge because a lot of things don't count on parses. If you're using your army of the dead and there's like a random mob over here, they might not count on your parses. Only bosses count for Warcraft logs individually. So making sure that your army and gargoyle are attacking the right opponent or right mob is gonna be huge. Also, this can be huge in arenas or any sort of PvP situation if you want to change the target of whatever your gargoyle is attacking. And the biggest way you can increase your DPS itself is to always look at what someone else is doing. Or feel free to come by my Twitch stream and we'll do some log reviews. But I will have a video coming out soon showing you how to break down logs. But if you don't know that yourself, look at something like the opener, and a fast way of doing it is to go to the timeline view or the event view and click on casts in Warcraft logs. Now you can see exactly what order people are doing things. You can see in this opener, I opened with my diseases into a death and decay, then dropped my blood strike because I wanted D&D to be back up sooner because there is going to be a little bit of cleave on this fight, and I want to get this blood strike up now to get my desolation buff. Then I go into my snapshot and start my normal rotation. Now you can look at something like that, or you can break down entire fights to see how you're comparing to other people. Are you getting as much of the same abilities out? Which one of your abilities are doing more damage, and how you actually kind of stack up? Again, I am actually working on a video for all classes. It'll probably come out for YouTube members first, but it'll be out for everyone eventually, that will tell you how to actually break down your logs, break down other people's logs for all classes, and really find how you can improve yourself. Lastly, thank you guys all for watching. We did just hit 40,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel, and we're gonna try to hit 50,000 by the end of the year, but that means we're gonna do a huge, massive mega giveaway of multiple deluxe editions of Wrath of the Lich King. This means you're gonna get level 70 boosts, and I'm gonna do this giveaway in a video this week, but make sure you're following me on Twitter, Sarthe TV, because if you're following there, it's gonna be part of the giveaway and it'll give you an extra chance to win this. And I'm also thinking of a few other things to give away, like some of my brand new merch line that's coming out soon. So let me know in the comments of this video what I should be giving away for this actual giveaway. And thank you guys so much. Of course, make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys all on the next one.